Thank you very much, Deputy O'Callaghan. Violence against women in all its manifestations and forms is a deeply traumatising act that demands government action on many different levels. Apart from the physical violence, the emotional and mental impact is also huge. The bill that we have here before us, the Criminal Law Bill 2018, is a good one on two different levels. Firstly, the fact that this bill contains the final legislative action required in order for Ireland to ratify the 2011 Istanbul Convention is really important. There have been numerous delays in the process, but we as a party in Fianna Fáil certainly welcome the completion of this process as the last step which must be taken before the Convention is ratified, because when we look at where we are now, a total of 45 countries have signed the Convention. Of these, 33 have ratified it so far. Well, we want Ireland to be the 34th. There are 12 countries at this stage who have signed but have not ratified, and we certainly shouldn't have any delay in bringing it further, because the Istanbul Convention was a really important convention, and it basically was about preventing and combating violence against women, and particularly domestic violence, and this was the very first European treaty which specifically targets violence against women and domestic violence. And we need to remember sometimes the purpose of the Convention, and that is to protect women against all forms of violence and to prevent, prosecute and eliminate violence against women, and of course to eliminate domestic violence, to contribute to the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women and promote a substantive equality between women and men, including by empowering women, to design a comprehensive framework, policies and measures for the protection of and assistance to all victims of violence against women and domestic violence, to promote international cooperation, for which this bill is key, with a view to eliminating violence against women and domestic violence, and to provide support and assistance to organisations and law enforcement agencies to effectively cooperate in order to adopt an integrated approach to eliminating violence against women and domestic violence. Now, my colleague Deputy O'Callaghan has outlined the very stark situation in Ireland in terms of the statistics that we have about violence against women and domestic violence. It's harrowing and it is shocking. And barely a week goes by without a woman coming to me in my own constituency to seek help, support and advice in relation to what they can do, many of them in situations where they're still living with the abuser. And it's an awful state of affairs, and as a country we need to do more to protect women that are in this horrific situation, and indeed their children. And there are many areas that we can help support. There are still some counties without domestic refuges. Now, luckily, we have a very good one in Kildare, in the town of Kildare, that gives a lot of support to women and to their families. But of course, they, like any other organisation that is giving really imperative help and support to women and families, need to have more help, particularly around providing counselling to these women and indeed to their children. We also need to ensure that housing money is ring-fenced for women who have to leave the family home. But in terms of this particular bill, which seeks to expand extraterritorial jurisdiction over a number of offences, which include assault, harassment, coercion and rape. And it certainly is the obligation of the state to address certain forms of criminal behaviour which transcend national borders. As a result, serious crimes committed by Irish people abroad should be liable to be prosecuted here in Ireland. Extraterritorial jurisdiction is not a new concept, but it's a very important one, and it's one that we absolutely need to sign up to. The domestic violence is more than a human rights violation and public health issue. And Safe Ireland last year, in their report, in terms of exploring its wider economic and social impact, highlighted the often maybe forgotten about and ignored consequences. So I think the purpose of this bill, which is to create extraterritorial jurisdiction over certain offences contained in the Non-Fatal Offences Against the Persons Act 1997 and the Criminal Law Rape Amendment Act 1990, as well as extending extraterritorial jurisdiction to murder and manslaughter committed abroad by Irish residents, is really, really important. Extraterritorial jurisdiction is the situation when a state extends its legal power beyond its territorial boundaries. And examples include where a state maintains jurisdiction over its citizens when they are overseas, and where certain criminal offences can be prosecuted in a state regardless of where they were committed, for example, piracy and child sex offences. And that's the main overview of the bill. As my colleague Deputy O'Callaghan has outlined, my party, Fianna Fáil, supports this bill. It is an important step in the next in the ratification of the Istanbul Convention. And Minister, can I say to you, we absolutely need to be the next country that ratifies this, and it is to protect women in very difficult and vulnerable situations, because no matter what the law is, women are in very difficult situations in terms of their own health, their lives indeed, in domestic situations. But we need to be able to equip the judiciary with everything that we can to ensure that perpetrators of violence against women and sexual and domestic violence can be brought to heel even when they escape and leave the jurisdiction. Gurv Mahagat.